Hey, everybody, some cool news about the pod before we get going on today's show. Ion College Basketball is again a finalist in the Sports Podcast Awards in the category for Best Basketball Podcast. So, in an effort to do some PSA work this time around, we wanted to get the word out. And by that, I mean we're doing it in the final week of voting. If you're watching on YouTube, you see a QR code right over my right shoulder here. Feel free to tap that and head on through. If you are listening to this podcast on your phone, on a tablet, through any podcast provider you use, go to the episode description of this show. We will have a link to the Sports Podcast Awards site where you can go and log your vote. I've already done it. It takes less than 60 seconds to do. They tell me that these awards are entirely determined by fan votes, so let's go out and prove that. There's more of us than there are of them, and if we wind up winning, who knows? Maybe we'll finally actually start making and selling t-shirts related to the show that you can wear proudly. But regardless, appreciate you so much. Because of our listenership, you make this possible. So go ahead, go vote often, tell your friends. Appreciate you. And now let's get to the show.
Let's get into it. I want to start at the top of the rankings, specifically with the Tennessee Vols, because not only are they about to be number one in the AP poll for the 5th straight week and number one in the top 25 and one for the 33rd consecutive morning, they are now also the sport's only remaining undefeated team. We started with 364 undefeated teams. Heading into the weekend, we had 3. But then Florida lost at Kentucky and Oklahoma lost at Alabama. So now Rick Barnes' Vols are not only undefeated and coming off of 76-52 beatdown of Arkansas that led to the latest interesting John Calipari press conference. They dominated Arkansas. They have dominated most people they've played. They are not number one in the computers, but they are number one in most human rankings at this point. First question, how impressed were you by what UT did to Arkansas? Secondly, are you a subscriber to the idea that the Vols aren't only undefeated and ranked number one, but also, yes, the sport's best team?
No, not the sport's best team. That is Auburn, which was reinforced again. Obviously a big weekend across college hoops, but the SEC in particular, as that league began intra-conference play. An interesting pattern emerged here, which we'll get to in a little bit. But no, every metric still says Auburn's the best team. I've been telling you since long before the season started that I thought Auburn would be one of the best teams in the country this year. And Tennessee, regardless, is a rightful holder of the number one ranking. I don't have any issue with that. The last unbeaten, they get it done. There was no problem whatsoever. I mean, Arkansas, a weird juxtaposition in that Arkansas only putting up 52 points. And granted, they had to go on the road. Tennessee is an elite defense. That's a really, really good team. I wasn't expecting Arkansas to win. I did think the game would be a bit more competitive, but to juxtapose that against Kentucky scoring more than double that, we'll get to the Florida-Kentucky epic in just a few here. An awesome moment for Tennessee hoops. It's going to hold the number one ranking in the AP rankings heading into a 5th straight week when those were new on Monday. Auburn will not jump Tennessee. The last unbeaten in the country. This is the first time that's ever happened in program history where the Vols are the last team without a scratch in the loss column. In men's college basketball, of course, it's happened in women's a couple of times there. Shout out to the late, great Pat Summitt. But overall, really good stuff. And continuing to see why Tennessee, you and I don't need convincing on that. A lot of people that watch and consume this podcast don't need convincing. But when you start league play, and college basketball has a Saturday largely to itself, not entirely, but largely to itself there, and to see Chaz Lanier following up the Dalton Connect performance as a one-year transfer. Now Lanier in this one goes for 29 points. If you watched the game and you were engaged in it before it really became a total runaway, you saw one of the best transfers again in college basketball wearing Tennessee orange. He looks tremendous. And the team looks tremendous. Zakai Ziegler continues to be such a key piece overall, but obviously what he can do defensively there. Arkansas was only able to get 12 out of Boogie Fland. Carter Knox just 6 points. Janelle Davis did not score in this game. One of the more heralded guys in the portal. Didn't even wind up scoring. DJ Wagner came up decently enough. He had 17, obviously. But this was all about Tennessee, what it can do, what it can be, who it is, and how it will continue to be the number one team in the rankings on the human side, even though Auburn across the board still rates comfortably as the best team in the sport.
When I ask you if Tennessee is actually the best team in the sport, not only ranked number one and undefeated, but also the best team in the sport, shouldn't your answer be maybe as opposed to no?
It is no. When every
How
single.
do you know that?
Well, here's the thing. I can't possibly know that, and no human can certainly know that.
Good. And then you should
when there are your precious computers that you love to reference on every single show, and every single one of them, which can dive into data on levels that a single human cannot, show that Auburn is by far the best team in the country, then that's why I will agree with them in an ad analysis here in the first week of January and say that, yes, Auburn is the best team in the land.
Shouldn't your answer have been maybe?
It will be maybe eventually, but right now on Sunday, when you ask me, Tennessee is not better than Auburn.
By the way, Auburn is not number one in every computer. That's a cute thing to say, but it's not true.
In every predictive metric.
I'll be clear. I don't know if Tennessee is actually the best team in the country, but I start that with I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that they're not. I just don't understand how so many people are certain that they're not. I'm willing to go as far as I think they might be. Auburn could be. Duke could be, Iowa State could be, but I don't know. Can say.
I'm asking you, but right now, who is the best team in the country tonight? Not projecting forward. Right now, who's the best team? You asked me the question. Right now, tonight, I say Auburn's the best team. Who's your answer?
I vote Tennessee.
Okay, there you go.
But I don't know. I'm baffled by how many people are so certain about this that there's no way Tennessee is not the best team in the country. There's just no way that rather they insist that Tennessee is not the best team in the country. There's no way that could be true. And I'm baffled by that. We're talking about a team that was expected to be good, a team that is good, a team that's got the only undefeated record in the sport, and a team that, even if they're not number one in the computers, they are top 5 in basically all of them and as high as number 2 in some. How can people be so sure that team's not the best?
I can't speak for anyone else on how they feel. I think that Tennessee has a really good chance at eventually being the best and has a really good case. It could well win the SEC and be the number 1 overall seed. I'm not putting that out of mind. Again, I'm simply answering the question you asked me. Is Tennessee the best team in the sport tonight? I'm saying no. Strangely enough, Tennessee, despite being undefeated and getting to this point as a member of the toughest conference in the land, albeit yet to having faced a road test in the SEC, it's not even number 2 or 3 at KenPom. It's not even top 3 in wins above bubble at this point. Auburn, Marquette, and Bama have done more against their resume through degree of difficulty per Torvik than the Vols to this point. But regardless, awesome team. I'm here to celebrate what the Vols have been, and it's a really cool, really amazing thing that they have gotten to this point without a scratch. Although I do think that first loss is coming. It's almost certainly coming in the next week. If it doesn't, how about this, GP?
Okay.
I will flip on this position if Tennessee can win at Florida on Tuesday and then it's at Texas on Saturday. Right. It takes both of those two on the road. I'm willing to change my position there. Auburn, meantime, is at Texas and then at South Carolina. We'll see if the Tigers can get through. It's next 2, both being on the road there. But again, we are truly splitting hairs here, right? And there are 6 or 7 viable national title contenders that seem on that upper tier right now. Tennessee is sitting shoulder to shoulder with every single other team.
Chaz Lanier is giving them an opportunity to have back-to-back SEC Players of the Year. I understand Janai Broome would be the leading candidate for that right now, but Lanier, how about this, is at least in a conversation to give them back-to-back first-team All-Americans. He's been terrific. They're number 1 in adjusted defensive efficiency, so elite on that side of the ball. Top 20-ish on the offensive side. It's just the latest awesome team that Rick Barnes is put together, and it'll be fascinating to see if they continue at this rate and get a 1 seed or a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. How are people projecting them in the bracket? Because some will assume they're going to get knocked off early or earlier than expected based on Rick Barnes's record within the NCAA tournament, which is 30-28 in NCAA tournament games. He's been in 28 NCAA tournaments, but only made the Sweet 16 9 times, the Elite 8 4, made that 1 Final Four back in 2003. So, that'll be one of the biggest questions going into the NCAA tournament. Yeah, Tennessee has been good all season, assuming they are good all season, but here we go. Can he break through? And that's just something that he carries around with him until, he does away with it. Matt Painter was dealing with this on a smaller level as recently as last March. Can Purdue finally break through? Can he finally break through? Obviously they do it, and you never have to answer that question again. Rick has been to a Final Four, but I think a common opinion connected to his Hall of Fame-ish career is that he should have done more. He should have more postseason success than he's achieved to this point in his career. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
That's fair. There was some of that last, and frankly, you can make the case that had Tennessee not been put in the same region as Purdue and all but Purdue and maybe UConn, potentially. I mean, there were other good teams there. Don't get me wrong, but maybe NC State was destined to go to the Final Four. But it lived up to its seed expectation. But historically, Rick Barnes' teams do not play to seed expectation. We'll see if this team can do it this season the way that it is playing. Obviously, that is highly indicative. 14-0, by the way, the first time since 1922-23, and I think Tennessee only played like 17, 18, 19 games that season. You know what? If there's a record from like, I'll give you to like 1935 and on, but even then, like pre-integration, I'm not really going to give too much credence here. But regardless, the records are the records, and Tennessee, as a men's basketball institution, has not started a season with 14 wins and 0 losses in 102 years. So congrats to them on that. Igor Milicic, oh, by the way, I didn't want to get through this without mentioning him as well. He had a really nice all-around game. And Tennessee, the reason why I think they've got such a good chance at minimally making the Elite Eight or winning 3 games in the tournament GP, if not going further, is the defense will travel. Tennessee is destined to take losses in the league like all of them are. I don't think any SEC team is going to get out of league play without at least 4 losses. And I'm talking the best teams in the league. I think their best case scenario is 4 losses. You could have a scenario where the top team winds up winning this league with 6 losses in league play, in a worst case scenario there. But there is some of that attached to Barnes, but I think some of it was tamped down a little bit last season by getting Tennessee to that regional final, playing a good game, and then getting beaten by the best player in the sport and one of the best teams in the sport. We'll see if he can make back-to-back Elite Eights or better, which obviously he's never done in his career.
I agree with you. It's going to be hard for him to be undefeated this time next week. The next one is really tough at Florida, and then at Texas. Texas is good, not great. But obviously that arena will be packed. Rick going back to Austin. If they're still undefeated, if they're 16-0 next week when we're talking on Sunday, I think there will be less people enthusiastic about screaming Tennessee might be undefeated and ranked number 1, but they're not really the best team in the country. They'll still be out there based on computer stuff, but 16-0 with 2 more big wins this week would be it would enhance the resume quite a bit. Let me ask you about John Calipari's press conference. A, did you see it? B, what did you make of it?
I did see the clip where he admitted that because of the early tip time and whatever went through in the hours and day leading up to it, he opted not to have a shoot around, which is uncommon, obviously, for a team not to go through shoot around before a game. Now, that being said, it's not completely unheard of. In fact, I want to say Jim Boeheim rarely had them, or what Boeheim did pregame was different from another coach. Regardless, it didn't help him. He regretted it after the fact. And hey, he admits to it and gives us something to talk about here. It obviously didn't help them. Frankly, had they had a shoot around, were they going in and beating Tennessee? I don't think so, but it certainly didn't help the margin. It makes the margin look even worse after the fact, and there's obviously something to grimace about all the more there. But hey, listen, he's going to be honest on the mic. I appreciate that. A little bit of a strange thing to admit, and clearly it didn't help Arkansas's matters whatsoever. For those that might be not entirely aware, like shoot around can have many beneficial things, but one of them is just get your guys in the building so they can get familiar with just being in that arena, knowing the rims, and just having some sort of memory muscle when it comes to that. Whether it has true impact on how teams play in a game, well, that's up for interpretation in a player by player, team by team, situation by situation circumstance there. But yeah, tough loss there for Arkansas to open SEC play and clearly establish itself right now as a tier below, at least amongst the other big boy teams that are vying for top 10 status.
His point about the shoot around, and for people who didn't see it, he actually said, hey, I wish I would have, if I could go back and do it over again, I would have had a shoot around. We didn't do one this morning, and I had 4 guys, no show. And maybe there's some validity to that, maybe not. I don't know. It feels a lot like when a football team or a basketball team or any team, I guess, is off for an extended, unusual amount of time. And then if they come out and they look great, it's like, well, they were rested. And if they come out and look not great, it's like, well, they were rusty. You just sort of assign whatever you need to assign to trace it back to this thing. And so if Arkansas would have come out and played well, it'd probably been like, well, we didn't do shoot around this morning. I let my guys sleep in a little bit. We were more fresh than I find it to be probably inconsequential to the outcome of the game, or at least not the explanation for why Arkansas got smacked around the way it got smacked around. But it was just the latest example of John using a press conference after a game to tell you what he wished he would have done differently to avoid this bad thing from happening. Like, I wish I would have done a shoot around, or I wish I would have called a timeout, or I wish I would have played Reed Shepherd more. Like, there's always these things. And like, they might all be true, but just sort of monitoring Kentucky fans and now already some Arkansas fans, like at some point people, like, he's really great at coming up with reasons for why the bad things happen, but has been less great in recent years at preventing the bad things from happening. And after a while, I think fans just want you to, like, they're just tired of hearing it. They want the bad things to stop happening. They don't want to hear your retrospective, look back at what you could have done differently. He started doing that a lot at Kentucky. And when I saw that yesterday with the Arkansas thing, it felt a lot like one of those post-game Kentucky press conferences in recent years.
Yeah. Interested to see what Arkansas is over the next couple of weeks here, because they've got good potential. I know they're going to pick off some teams. Will we see a Calipari coach team the rest of this schedule really get run out of the building like it did against Tennessee? That'll be interesting to see.